Three economic calculations changed everything I thought I knew about global financial hegemony: $850 billion, 72 hours, and 100 years. The classified economic intelligence report that landed on my desk at 11:47 p.m. last Tuesday changed everything I thought I knew about American economic power. I've spent 40 years studying how economic empires rise and fall, witnessed the Soviet financial collapse firsthand, analyzed China's economic ascent, tracked America's monetary unipolar moment from its peak to what I assumed would be its gradual economic decline. But nothing prepared me for the financial intelligence briefing that arrived through secure Federal Reserve channels Tuesday night with a timestamp that will haunt me forever. In exactly 72 hours, Vladimir Putin didn't just challenge American economic hegemony. He ended it not through sanctions or trade wars, but through a sequence of economic moves so precisely calculated that by Thursday evening, the petrodollar system was dead. NATO's financial architecture was in psychological collapse, and American monetary supremacy had become a historical footnote. Let me walk you through those 72 hours, because what happened represents the most catastrophic economic strategic failure in American history. And the most terrifying part, we created every financial condition that made Putin's economic victory possible. The first economic domino fell at precisely 14:23 Moscow time on Tuesday, when Russian financial institutions announced coordinated settlement agreements with Venezuelan oil operations. Not a single transaction, not a routine energy deal, but a comprehensive financial framework using yuan and rubles that completely bypassed dollar-denominated systems. Intelligence analysis confirmed this wasn't positioned for symbolic economic effect. Financial sources revealed these settlements were actively targeting the $850 billion in annual global energy transactions currently processed through American banking networks. For the first time since the petrodollar system was established in 1973, foreign financial systems were processing major energy transactions from positions we considered permanently secure under American monetary control. The psychological impact on American financial commanders was immediate and devastating. Treasury officials who had operated with assumptions of dollar invulnerability suddenly found themselves calculating survival probabilities for the global reserve currency system. Wednesday brought the second economic domino. Putin's financial forces didn't just establish alternative payment systems with Venezuela. They constructed what economic intelligence analysts recognized as permanent monetary infrastructure, central bank coordination centers built to Russian specifications, currency swap arrangements linking directly to Moscow, financial clearinghouses providing coverage that overlapped with existing Russian monetary installations across developing economies. This wasn't temporary positioning for diplomatic leverage. This was the construction of a Russian financial bridgehead in the global economy designed for expansion and long-term operational capability outside American monetary oversight. By Wednesday evening, Western financial capitals were in panic mode that I've never witnessed during 5 decades of analyzing monetary alliance behavior. Emergency sessions at the Federal Reserve, panic conferences in European Central Bank headquarters, hushed conversations in Treasury Department offices, where words like existential and unprecedented dominated secure communications. But the third economic domino was what transformed a regional financial crisis into global monetary catastrophe. Thursday morning brought confirmation through multiple economic intelligence streams that Venezuela's Russian financial deployment was coordinated with simultaneous monetary movements in 3 other economic theaters. Chinese banks began processing Iranian oil transactions in yuan, completely bypassing SWIFT systems. Middle Eastern sovereign wealth funds started diversifying reserves away from dollar assets toward gold and alternative currencies. Most alarming of all, major European corporations began establishing ruble and yuan accounts for energy transactions, effectively preparing for post-dollar trade relationships. Putin hadn't just challenged American economic dominance in one financial sector. He had triggered coordinated pressure on American monetary interests globally, forcing Treasury planners to confront the nightmare scenario they had spent decades trying to avoid: simultaneous financial crises on multiple economic fronts that exceeded American capacity for effective monetary response. The genius of Putin's 72-hour economic sequence lay in its exploitation of American financial assumptions that had gone unquestioned since the end of the Cold War. American monetary planning assumed that challenges to dollar dominance would remain regional and sequential, allowing superior American financial resources to address threats individually. Putin shattered that assumption by demonstrating that coordinated economic pressure from multiple adversaries could overwhelm American monetary capabilities, even when American financial technologies remained superior. The issue wasn't American economic firepower. The issue was American financial bandwidth. Standing in my Chicago office Thursday evening, reviewing financial intelligence of Russian monetary installations in Venezuela, while monitoring reports of Chinese payment systems bypassing SWIFT and Middle Eastern sovereign wealth funds diversifying away from dollars, I experienced something I had never felt during decades of analyzing great power economic competition. Genuine fear for American survival as a global financial hegemon. The economic mathematics were brutal and undeniable. America possessed the monetary capability to respond decisively to any single financial challenge. America lacked the economic resources to respond effectively to coordinated challenges that required simultaneous financial commitments across opposite sides of the planet. Putin had discovered the formula for defeating American economic hegemony without defeating American financial institutions, stretch American monetary commitments beyond American capacity, while providing adversaries with alternatives to American-dominated financial systems. But here's what made Putin's economic victory so psychologically devastating for American strategic planners. Every condition that enabled his financial success had been created by American economic policies designed to strengthen American monetary dominance. For 15 years, American financial sanctions against Venezuela had pushed Caracas into Moscow's economic arms. Every asset we froze, every banking restriction we imposed, every financial isolation measure we backed drove Venezuelan leadership to seek monetary security guarantees from powers willing to confront American economic pressure. American financial isolation of Iran had created incentives for Tehran to coordinate with Moscow and Beijing in ways that served Russian economic objectives. American economic pressure on China had provided Beijing with justification for financial system modernization and monetary alliance building that challenged American financial regional dominance. The sanctions regime that was supposed to weaken American economic adversaries had instead created a coordination mechanism between powers that shared opposition to American financial hegemony. Every country we added to our financial sanctions list became another member of what economic intelligence analysts now call the alternative financial network. The economic intelligence report that kept me awake Tuesday night included psychological assessments of monetary alliance behavior that revealed how completely American financial strategic culture had misunderstood the dynamics of economic hegemonic decline. American policymakers assumed that American monetary power was so overwhelming that isolated financial challenges could be managed through superior economic resources and technological advantages. Putin understood that American financial power, while vast, was not infinite. Coordinated economic pressure from multiple directions could force American decision makers to choose between monetary commitments they had assumed were mutually reinforcing. Once those choices became necessary, American financial credibility would collapse regardless of American economic capabilities. The psychological damage to American financial alliance relationships was immediate and perhaps irreversible. European finance ministers who had relied on American monetary system guarantees for 7 decades suddenly faced questions about whether those guarantees remained credible when America confronted global financial challenges simultaneously. Japanese economic leadership began private discussions about independent financial capabilities that didn't depend on American willingness to defend dollar dominance during Chinese monetary expansion. South Korean economic planners started calculating whether American financial commitments in the region remained sustainable if American monetary forces were engaged in Venezuelan operations against Russian economic systems. Every ally that had based economic planning on assumptions of American financial omnipresence began developing contingency plans for scenarios where American monetary support might not be available when needed. The financial alliance system that had enabled American global economic dominance started fragmenting as partners hedged against American strategic monetary overextension. Thursday evening brought the psychological coup de grace that completed Putin's destruction of American economic hegemony. Chinese leadership announced what they called coordination exercises with Russian and Iranian financial systems that would demonstrate mutual support for sovereign monetary rights against hegemonic economic interference. The announcement wasn't directed at American financial capabilities. It was directed at American economic psychology. Beijing was signaling that American economic adversaries could coordinate financial responses to American pressure, while American allies remained dependent on American willingness to maintain global monetary commitments simultaneously. The message was clear and terrifying from an economic perspective. America's financial enemies could act together while America's economic friends could only react individually. The coordination differential that had enabled American financial hegemony during the unipolar moment had reversed. Putin's 72-hour economic masterpiece wasn't really about Venezuelan financial operations or Caribbean monetary systems. It was about proving that American global economic dominance could be ended through strategic financial coordination rather than monetary confrontation. By forcing America to respond to simultaneous economic challenges on multiple continents, Putin demonstrated that American financial power was finite while American monetary commitments were unlimited. The mathematical impossibility of that equation guaranteed American economic strategic failure regardless of American tactical financial successes. Friday brought economic intelligence confirmation of what financial analysts had feared most. Putin's success in demonstrating American economic vulnerability through coordinated financial pressure had inspired similar strategies in other regions where American monetary dominance was assumed but not guaranteed. African nations began questioning why American financial institutions should control African monetary systems without African oversight of their operations. Middle Eastern economic partners started exploring alternatives to American financial relationships that had produced monetary instability rather than economic protection. Asian allies began recalculating whether automatic support for American regional economic strategies served their long-term financial interests. The demonstration effect of successful resistance to American economic power created incentives for challenges to American financial dominance worldwide. Putin had provided an economic template that other powers could adapt to their regional monetary circumstances and strategic financial capabilities. Standing in my office this morning watching financial news reports of Russian monetary operations in Venezuela, while Chinese financial systems conducted exercises bypassing SWIFT, I realized that Putin's 72-hour economic sequence had achieved something more significant than tactical financial advantage. He had changed global psychology about American economic power from assumptions of financial invincibility to recognition of monetary vulnerability. Once that psychological shift occurs, every strategic economic relationship changes as allies hedge against American financial weakness while adversaries exploit American monetary limitations. The American economic century didn't end through financial defeat or monetary collapse. It ended through strategic economic exhaustion created by adversaries who understood American financial psychology better than America understood itself. Putin's economic genius lay in recognizing that American financial hegemony depended more on monetary perception than economic capability. By demonstrating that American financial commitments exceeded American monetary bandwidth, he destroyed the perception that made American economic dominance sustainable. The petrodollar system that anchored American financial hegemony for 50 years died not through currency wars or trade conflict, but through the mathematical recognition that even the world's dominant economy cannot maintain infinite monetary commitments with finite economic resources. In 72 hours, Vladimir Putin proved that the side that controls global financial coordination controls the global economy, regardless of which currency individual transactions use.